Over the past 2 weeks, me, my family, my office, the citizens of Etowah County have been targets of miscellaneous fake news stories. This is a jail. This is not a bed and breakfast. If you're used to eating grandma's fried chicken, ordering pizza several times a week, you're not going to be happy. Haven't done anything wrong. If it's wrong, somebody needs to change the law.
Want to give it all to charity, so there's no question about it.
Well, this is just like anybody that gets out here and works every day, and at the end of the day, if you make a profit, it's yours.
But this is public service, sir. It's public service.
I asked to be the sheriff, and it come with that job, and so
they say
I'm not gonna make you happy.
Alabama, up north in them hills, near the town of Gadsden, well, you'll see the ills of a land filled with hypocrisy and hate. For there is a place that they'll take you from your home. They'll strip you of your family. They'll leave you all alone. And if you don't look like one of us, you won't make it out alive. You can hear it in their screams. You can see it in their eyes. Mothers wail in pain as a little child cries. So people outside all shout, shut Etowah down.
All right, y'all. Thank you for tuning in to Dixieland, the Proletariat. We're going to talk about Southern working class history and current events through a leftist perspective. Make sure to like us on social media at Dixieland of the Proletariat or Dixie Prol. And if you want to give your wages to a bunch of rednecks, then subscribe to our Patreon page at patreon.com/DixieProl. We got a lot of cool stuff to give you, including CDs, stickers, a cookbook, Discord server, Twitch stream, and exclusive episodes. We also have a Spotify playlist with some great artists you also check out, as well as our merch store. This podcast is brought to you by Contractional Monogamy, Therapy, Vaping, Living at Home, Modelo, Pushing People in the Swamps, Tommy Cheating Death, and the Todd Enterkin special at the cafeteria, only served on Wednesdays. Shout out to our new Patreon subscribers, Kat, William, and Alyssa. Our monthly Patreon surplus goes to groups that are run by and or help marginalized people directly. As always, I'm Nelson with
Fillmore.
Fucking thanks. No, I'm not here for this episode. Fuck y'all.
Hey, y'all, my name's Tyler. I'm here. Hey, y'all, I'm Tyler.
Tyler's busy taking some codeine.
No, I'm right here. Kind of know what you're talking about. My name's Tyler. And our guest for the second time and a great time this evening is...
Hi, I'm Asher Stubbston. I'm here to talk about the Etowah County Detention Center because I work for Shut Down Etowah.
Yay! It's just, God, this is gonna be so, we are literally we talk about some of the darkest shit. I really wish that like it's always like Southern working class history and current events are always fucking dark. There's like never any like we need to have like a positive, like something that doesn't have to do with like genocide and racism. And Kai just looking at me like you are a stupid white man.
What do you want me to just pull it out of my ass? What the fuck do you think you're gonna find?
There's got to be some happiness somewhere.
One time somebody didn't get lynched.
There was a time where this one black couple rolled through West Virginia in the middle of the night, and nothing bad happened.
I'll do an episode just talking about like pre-Columbian shit. Just everybody's living on their own land, doing what they do.
Before the white man came. I love that Morgan Freeman narration right there. It's like, we got to think of a title of that movie. That'd be beautiful.
I was literally thinking of that Oscar bait movie, that Green Book movie, that was like, it solved racism. And like, no, it didn't.
We have to do, oh my God.
When a black man teaches a white man how to make fried chicken.
We literally have to do a read through of the Green Book, but like not read it and just come up with some stuff that's probably better than the movie.
No, Nelson, we need to watch the movie and react to it on here and just be like, what the fuck?
What is this?
There's been a big like white people solve racism movie like every like 10 years. So we had like what, Driving Miss Daisy. We had The Bodyguard.
A Time to Kill.
We had
Time to Kill is the best.
The Help.
The Help. Oh my God. Blindside.
The Blind Side.
Nothing beats a time to. I still love A Time to Kill just because Samuel Jackson kills Klansmen, but like in that one Klans dude that catches on fire and he's like, ah! Oh my god. Anyway, speaking of racists, no, that would have been a really
that was a hard cut.
Yeah, maybe think of a different introduction.
Yeah.
Speaking of racists, here's Asher. Y'all need to be so much kinder to our guests.
Man.
It's just great.
Sorry, Asher.
It's just great having someone that's been on before and knows how much of a clusterfuck the podcast is. But Asher, tell us. Oh God, I can't. This topic is so horrible. Asher, tell us about the Etowah County Detention Center.
All right.
Yeah, just give us a brief.
Shut up, Nelson.
I don't want to.
So yeah, I'll say, yeah, I didn't bring very many jokes.
We got him out of the way first.
The horrible news ratio is going to be off for this one. So yeah, feel free to chime in with the jokes if they strike you. But the Etowah County Detention Center, also called the Etowah County Jail because it is both, is right in the middle of Gadsden, Alabama, right on one of the busiest streets in town. And the county has a contract with ICE to let ICE pretty much warehouse people there indefinitely. So ICE can fill up to 300 beds of people that they've detained. That's refugees, immigrants, and undocumented people. And it has a long, long history of being one of the worst detention centers in the whole country. A couple things add up to make it that. One of the main things is that Gadsden is so isolated. So ICE will take people from where they're living, whether that's like California or New York, detain them there and then transfer them here, especially people who are organizing on the inside, or people who have cases that get caught in limbo. And so they're detained for like way longer than is constitutional. Those people just tend to end up at Etowah. It has, I don't know, I can just keep going. I can just list stuff off, but it's been decades. It's been decades of problems at this jail. They have constant problems like maintaining the place. There's leaks, there's stuff going out all the time. It's consistently overpopulated. They have a huge problem with medical neglect, which has gotten especially scary because of COVID, where people are pretty much denied any kind of like doctor's appointment, and the kind of medical help they do get is just like nothing. Also, they use COVID as an excuse to get rid of visitation. So since COVID started, there's been like no visitation to any of the people in ICE detention there. The food is horrible. They pretty much cut every corner and spare every expense to make it a horrible place. And this is where I get stuck empty-handed for jokes.
I did want to ask real quick. You said New York, so there's I always thought that it was, even though it is horrible, it was the detention center for, I guess, the Southeast, but they are taking people all the way from New York. So this is, you could be literally anywhere in the country, it seems, and end up in Gadsden, Alabama. Is that true?
Yeah, and that's kind of like what's so scary about it. like if someone is undocumented and gets taken in by ICE in like LA, they have a network of support in LA as long as they're like still there. And it's a lot easier to keep in touch, keep tabs on your like loved one who's inside. And so they'll move people to Etowah, where it's like, there's no one living in Alabama, especially not Etowah County. I mean, Gadsden is not a very big city, and it's the only real city. It's just like towns besides that. And like the rest of Alabama is really rural. Like the most nearby places is like Chattanooga and Birmingham. And it's a ways from Atlanta. So there's really no like huge network of people. And that's all intentional. The facility itself is used by ICE to like suppress people organizing on the inside. And yeah, we get a lot of people from California, who are inside. A lot of people from Florida, Texas, New York, New Jersey, really all over the country. Like I was going to just list off stuff, and also all over the world, because it's like immigrants and refugees, and they can come from like anywhere in the whole world, end up in the United States and have wildly different like experiences, reasons to be here, and then just get stuck in this ICE detention system.
So, I knowing how backed up and how terrible our immigration is, how long do these refugees and immigrants typically end up staying in this facility before they even get a court date?
It can vary widely depending on your case. But I've picked up someone from Etowah who got released after being in ICE detention for 7 years. And the process ended in them just being released. Like they just decided one day that they were supposed to be released, and so they released. And a lot of the folks have cases that that are pending, but they could easily just do their case and not be detained at all. And that's one of the biggest places where the cruelty and the racism comes into play, is that it's just the vibes of some person in power gets to decide whether or not someone's detained or released or deported. So yeah.
So to my understanding, this detention center, there's no outdoors time. So they're just strictly inside. So this lady spent 7 years inside of a detention center, never going outside. That's insane.
Yeah, I don't think all those 7 years were at Etowah for this particular person. But yes, yeah. And there's people who've been at Etowah for 2 or 3 years. And yeah, there's no outside yard. It's details like that just float away when I'm trying to list off the different things, because there's so many things that are just unbelievable about this place. But yeah, there's no outside yard. They have recreation areas, but nowhere where you can feel the sun on you. It's a cold and damp, dingy place. And it's just depressing to just be inside there at all. Especially this time of year with all the rain, it's flooding like crazy inside of there.
I wanted to ask, could you go more into how run down and just bad this facility is? Because I've seen pictures of it and people can look it up online. It's just this nasty, gray looking, it's massive. It's a massive county jail that's also an ICE detention center. So it's a disgusting place. But when you talk about the flooding and stuff, can you go into more of how the facilities basically are just horrible?
Yeah. So I encourage everyone to come out to a Shut Down Etowah demonstration. That's where you'll really feel the gravity of what's going on, because you'll be able to look across the street and see people in the windows. But I think a good thing that explains how the conditions are is recently there was a series of transfers. This was a couple months back. A series of transfers of people that got moved into the facility. And then as soon as they all got moved in, they moved everyone to another unit that is called Unit 8. And it was never designed to have general population. It's literally designed to punish people because it's designed for solitary. And so you have upwards of 300 people in a unit that was designed for not that many. There's one TV, there's one microwave. It's 2 to 3 people to a cell. A lot of the toilets, showers don't work. And they just had no problem moving people in and then fixing some of those things later and not for some of the other things. People are just being warehoused there. Like they are trying to maximize the profit they can get off of this contract with ICE, and trying to squeeze as many people as they possibly can in there. And it just leads to worse and worse, more unsafe conditions.
So Alabama's jails and prisons are notoriously absolutely horrible and rife with abuse and corruption. But there was a case that's specifically about the sheriff of Etowah County and it was like some Depression era law where he was allowed to siphon off funds for like from food and stuff. Can you go into more like that? Because like that's from what I've read and remember, it was absolutely disgusting.
Yeah, that one got a lot of press. Pretty much the sheriff at the time, his name was Todd Entrenken. And I'm sorry, is that right? We talked about that earlier. Y'all should edit this part out, but
No, that's what. Yeah, Todd. Yeah, Todd Entrenken. Yeah.
Okay, well, let me start out. Todd Entrenken. So there was this sheriff named Todd Entrenken, and he, as the sheriff of the county, oversaw pretty much the entire operations of the detention center. And there's a law in Alabama that lets the sheriff just pocket the extra money that they don't spend on food. And it's designed to like cut costs or whatever. But it's just corruption. And he took that money and he bought himself a beach house. And that made a lot of people very mad.
A $750,000 beach house.
Yeah, it's nice. I've seen pictures. And he ended up not being sheriff after that because it became a huge scandal. There's a new sheriff. His name's Sheriff Horton. And he's continuing on the legacy. But the aftermath of this beach house incident is interesting because the food never got any better. Like the amount of money that they spent on food never increased. But the state of Alabama stepped in and changed the law like that next legislative session in the spring. But all they did was they changed it so that you couldn't pocket the money, but you could pass it on to a different like government organization. So he can't buy himself a beach house, but the money is just going to like some other part of the Etowah County government. I heard that he bought gun safes for a school.
What?
Hell yeah, brother. The only thing that stops a bad guy with a gun is a bunch of good kids with a gun.
Oh my, he bought gun safes for a school?
Puppy pistol. Get it while it's hot.
That what? Oh
but
my
it's not a beach house, so progress.
I thought you were gonna say he bought like a tank or like an MRAP for the Etowah County sheriffs because the cops like love buying like surplus military hardware. That's wild.
Can you imagine like school shooter scenarios and kids are just running the gun lockers?
I've heard people tell us some crazy shit on here, but like a sheriff bought gun safes for a school. That is
among other things. That was just one of the things that this money ended up going to. And I don't know the full details on that, but that's one of the things that the money ended up going to instead of a beach house, but still the people detained in the jail, the people detained in the ICE units
didn't get anything.
No better food.
Yeah.
The food is honestly like one of the biggest complaints. The food and just the general dingy, dark, moldy atmosphere.
So before we get into the organization Shut Down Etowah, you mentioned that they've taken advantage of COVID to restrict visitation, but how has COVID affected people who are detained there? Obviously, the conditions are horrible, so it's ripe for like a communal disease like COVID to go around. So what has been the effects of COVID at the detention center?
They are wide. The effects are far-reaching. So the sheriff immediately, of course, jumped on it as an excuse to cut people off of more things. So there hasn't been visitation since COVID started. There's like a sign, there's like a laminated piece of paper on the visitation door that says like, no visitation until COVID's over. And it's like May 2020. And it's just, they just haven't bothered to start doing visitation again. They claim that you can do online visitation through the tablets that are inside. But we have so far been unsuccessful in doing any kind of online visitation, at least in the ICE units. So yeah, there's been no visitation. And there was a whole other organization, the Etowah Visitation Project, that would take people up and go in like a big group to like visit people. And they've just had to suspend those visitations entirely because of COVID. Also, COVID is just widespread, like in the facility. They continue to transfer people around. They continue to overcrowd people. And like, if you're in a cold, dingy, like brick box with 3 other people, like the COVID is gonna spread. There was one person, he's been released now, whose name was Kareem, and he got COVID twice. Both times he just had to just sit through it. Like, didn't get taken to the hospital. Like, you get no medical care when you're in Etowah. And so people are contracting COVID and are really, we don't even know how many people even have it, how widespread it is, but it just continues to get worse and worse. The vaccine was available one time on one day, and the majority of the people inside declined to get vaccinated for reasons that are complicated but very real, which is that, you know, if you're being in this level of like locked down in this place, you have the right to exercise that bodily autonomy. And it's scary, you know. So there's pretty much no one is vaccinated, and COVID is just continuing to spread. While everyone on the outside is now like over COVID, and it's not really a buzzword anymore. And so every time like we talk about it, it doesn't really get hits. It doesn't get reporters coming in to talk about COVID at the detention center, because that's like yesterday's news. But it's still very much a huge problem. A lot of people are going to end up with long-term like health problems because of this.
Now, so to pivot to the organization, Shut Down Etowah, what is Shut Down Etowah? Who are y'all? What do y'all do? So could you just talk about the organization?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we are a coalition of many different activists and organizations in Alabama. We have several different things that we do, but all of it is activism and advocacy. And there's also several other groups that like we work very closely with that are also doing stuff for Etowah. And we have a really good team. Like, there's a lot of people putting in a lot of work to help improve the conditions, to help make the day of someone a little bit brighter if they're inside or they're getting out. But yeah, we plan demonstrations. We plan release campaigns where we can inform people of something going on and ask them to call in. More about that later. We can provide like support in the form of sometimes we can do commissary payments with the help of the Etowah Freedom Fund. People can request to have money on their commissary. We stay in touch with folks and try to assist them however we can. Especially in the unit they're in right now, there's so few computers and printers that you have to wait forever to ever get access to a computer. And so a lot of folks will need help with that. We also stay in touch with folks just to keep tabs on what's going on. It's such a crazy place that like sometimes something will just happen that is newsworthy that could just never be known, never heard about anywhere. And so we have to stay in touch just to get these like stories out of what's happening. And we also provide release support. That's also with the help of Etowah Freedom Fund. And pretty much what that is if someone gets out of ICE detention, we will send someone to pick them up, provide them with something if we can. A lot of times we try to give them cash or a cell phone or a lunch, and then we'll buy them a plane ticket back home, drive them to Birmingham, and like help them get through TSA. And that's one of the wonderful volunteer opportunities, because it can be really amazing to pick someone up and help them get back to their family.
Especially being so far away, like it still blows my mind that like people from like Los Angeles and New York end up in Gadsden. Like it just adds to like the cruelty of the whole situation. Like it's absolutely disgusting. I guess when it comes to like representing the people that are incarcerated there, are there lawyers that volunteer their time? Like how does one get out of this situation?
Mm-hmm. It was a very complicated question. I'll try to do it justice. The legal side of things is not my area of expertise also. I'm not a lawyer, so I guess I feel like I should say that out loud. But one of the hardest things in dealing with that is that there's a huge shortage of lawyers who are doing immigration cases, especially people who need pro bono work. Lawyers are expensive, and you have to be in some form or another specialized in immigration law, because immigration law is different than other like forms of law. And there's just so many people that are being detained right now and being picked up by ICE, and the prison industrial, like ICE industrial complex has gotten so massive that there just aren't enough lawyers. So we get people all the time that message us saying they need a lawyer, and we don't have any lawyers to connect them with. There are some folks who are able to connect to legal help, but it's on a case-by-case basis, and it's very, very difficult. So I'd say the majority of people in ICE detention are not represented by any attorney, just whoever gets assigned to do it. And there's been videos released of like mass trials where they'll line up people, 20, 30 people in a room, and a judge just decides what happens. So yeah, and if you're a lawyer and you're listening to this, especially if you know about immigration law, message us on Facebook, Instagram. We would love to connect you with some people in Etowah if you have the capacity to do pro bono work.
So you bring up a good point, because I've seen those videos before, and like there's literally children. So like I guess the question I wanted to ask is just like what is the age range at Etowah? Like are there children? Like are there infants and children and toddlers in Etowah County Detention Center? Like how does that work? But do you know any cases?
There, to my knowledge, there's not been children in ICE detention at the county jail. So right now it is adult men, but that means just 18 plus, and it means people who the government identifies as men. There used to be women in ICE detention at Etowah. That has ended several years ago. And there are women in general population, so not ICE detainees, but people in the county jail. But despite having a Joe Biden presidency, there are still children in ICE detention. They call them influx facilities, but they're still just detention centers all the same.
That was going to be another thing. Like, I guess has we all know the answer, but like, has there been any change between the administrations? Like when it comes to I guess the Etowah County Detention Center specifically, has there been any sort of improvement or anything that's positive about it, or no?
At Etowah specifically, no. I can't think of a single thing that the change of administration has done to fix Etowah. Now, there are signs that the ice is melting in some places. There are now 3 detention centers that have announced that they will not have ICE contracts. One of those is the Irwin Detention Center, which came under a lot of fire because there were, it was shown that there were people giving forced hysterectomies, which is a whole level of evil. And it has been announced that it's been closed. But since they've announced that they're going to cut the contract with ICE, they've transferred more people in. So it's kind of up in the air if that is or isn't going to actually happen. And no word from Joe Biden on Etowah. Now, Etowah is part of the first 10 detention centers that were identified by Detention Watch Network as like the first 10 that have to go. Irwin and one of the other ones that got announced that it was going to be closed is also on that list. So everyone knows that it has to go. It's been in the news for decades, like it has to go. But they haven't it doesn't seem like they want to touch it yet. Also, I'll say that the Joe Biden administration has not slowed down on detaining people. There's still people being detained at an alarming rate by ICE. And they have been speeding up deportations. Like, ICE can't close facilities and keep detaining people at the same time. So as facilities are closing, people are getting transferred to places like Etowah. So it seems really fake to want to close this facility and this facility, but keep the ones that we all know like are torturous. Not that Irwin and Bristol don't have to be closed. They absolutely do. But we have to close everything. Like, we need abolition, or else people are going to be moved to just a different facility. And that's true of children in detention, and that's true of adults in detention.
So you mentioned at the beginning that one of the reasons that people get sent to Etowah in specific is because they are organizing inside their detention centers. So I assume what that means is that they are purposely identifying these people who are organizing and sending them away so that the organization effectively gets split up, or whatever efforts were getting split up. So do you know what kind of organization is happening inside these detention centers?
Mm-hmm. There's regular protests inside as well as outside. There have been many instances of hunger strikes that have lasted short times and lasted long times, and all kinds of demonstrations, organizing that's like going on the inside. And yes, they do try to split that up. That's one of the reasons the transfers are so horrible, is because they're breaking apart people's networks where, if everyone has a chance to all pass along the information about the best direction to go in advocating for yourself, and then you take half those people, put them somewhere else, and move in a bunch of other people, then only some people know the plan. And ICE does that intentionally. I think of Etowah as one of the most powerful weapons that ICE uses to suppress people inside organizing for themselves.
Because like you're right, like who can get there? Like from the outside, like it is like from people who are not from Alabama, like it really is in the middle of nowhere. Like there's nothing around. So even if you fly into Atlanta, if you're a family member, let's say you're in Los Angeles and you fly into Birmingham or Atlanta to see your relative, you still have to get transportation to, there's no trains, there's no nothing. It's Gadsden, Alabama.
Yeah.
So it really what you said, I think speaks volumes. Like it really is from what you're describing and from what I've read, like the worst of the worst. Like it's like one of those places where like they'll send you there knowing that it's going to break you because it is so bad. And it's disgusting. I guess like a question is like, what's been the response of the community? Do people even care that like this is there? Like what in the surrounding area, like what has been the response from Shut Down Etowah? What has been the pushback, I guess? Because there's always going to be pushback, like I guess from ICE and then the sheriff's department, because the sheriff's department wants this ICE contract money. So obviously they don't like that a bunch of people are coming to try and shut this down. It's like, what's been the pushback?
When you talk to people up in Gadsden and up in Etowah County, it's surprising how much people are down. Everyone has like a family member that's been there. And so people know firsthand how horrible it is. The roadblocks that you start to get into is when you go to the ICE has to be abolished, prison has to be abolished direction. And then people kind of fall off and have trouble with that concept. But as that becomes more and more like a national conversation, people are slowly but surely getting it. And we have a growing base of support in Etowah County. We always have, but especially lately, it's been some amazing stuff going on. I may need a cough drop, but I have something else I'd like to say about the Gadsden activists, but let me go grab a cough drop first.
If y'all want to know something funny, y'all making fun of me about being old, I had like 2 seconds ago when I left, I have heartburn, so I had to go get my Tums.
You're literally falling apart.
I am. I'm literally falling apart. Oh man, I had pizza and I was like, oh, I gotta take my my Lactaid and my heartburn medicine.
Just shows that you're a fake Italian, like we were talking about.
Oh, whoa. I used to be able to process dairy, and then slowly but surely, for some reason, my body rejected it. It's just like the Italianness is left. The longer I stay in America, until I get back to my homeland.
You were fucking born there.
I know, right? It's like, and I was young. And I could do it, but then like the farther we stay in the diaspora, the Italian diaspora.
It's that 1/4 wasp in you.
I know, right? Oh my God. I don't get it. It's I just take my pills and my Tums. Anyway,
please go ahead, Ashley.
Getting old sucks.
I'm glad you have jokes because, like I said before, I don't have any jokes today.
I have heartburn.
One recent really great development for Shut Down Etowah is that Gadsden now has a free store. It's very, very close to the detention center also. It is a stone's throw, like less than a block away. If you walk out of the free store, you're looking at the detention center. And that speaks to a growing mass of abolitionist-minded people. And that energy is there in the county. That abolition energy is definitely there, and it's growing. And like I said, the ice is melting in places.
Do you think this is just from like the people who live in Etowah County, like being affected personally, like not with ICE, but with the county sheriffs and like being locked up in this horrible county jail? It's also the detention center. Like, hey, you know, if your brother, your sister, your cousin, or anyone parent like gets in there, it's just like realizing that they really don't care about you and saying that like, hey, you know, if they're gonna do this to undocumented people, they could do it to us, and they do it to us. So like, do you feel that like because the detention center is also the county jail and people are actually like cycling through and seeing how horrible it is and telling people like, hey, this is bad, that like the message is finally getting out?
Yeah, like they both have to get shut down. The entire facility, the entire physical building has to go. So It has to happen for the ICE people, and it has to happen for the county jail people. We get so much support at our demonstrations from just passerbys. People come by and honk their horn, or people will come by and not even have heard about the campaign before, but know all about the jail. Or they'll even know all about the jail, but not even know that there's an ICE contract. And then, of course, you tell them that, and I can tell people all the stuff I told you all today, and it's crazy, right? It's emotionally like crushing just to hear that that's going on. And of course, you still have people who listen to the Fox News conservative like talking points, and really there's no getting into that person's brain, if they just repeat over and over again, wow, well, what about murderers and rapists, and what do we do to them? There's a lot of that sentiment, but there's a lot of abolitionist momentum potential.
I guess so we do hear a lot about like the prison industrial complex and the ICE industrial complex. I guess my question, like just trying to like picture this because it just sounds so horrible. Like they're in this detention center all day. Like I don't know. I can't even wrap my head around it. Like it sounds so just fucking horrible. Like I don't even know where I'm going. It does sound just disgusting. And it's just like, I just can't imagine it. Like it's just fuck.
I can't imagine people spewing lies about my name.
Joe Biden is here again.
And there he is.
I guess the next thing is like, I am wondering like what, cause like I've heard like when you have rallies, right? I remember like pictures and saying like, oh, that here come the sheriff on horseback. Like they're like, so what has been, obviously there's people that want to keep it there. So like what pushback, I guess, have you seen, especially from, I guess, the sheriff's department, the people who like, they want that contract. It's a lot of money, obviously. So like even with a new sheriff, even with a new, administration, what has been the pushback, if any? Like it just seems like I'm sure like the deputies and the sheriffs, like they want to keep that contract.
Yeah, and they don't see it going anytime soon. And they use all of the tools that cops always use to suppress activists. So yeah, they've come out on horseback. They're always just doing circles in their car. It's a strange chess game we play of what is and isn't a place we can go and demonstrate. One time someone pulled into the parking lot and they tried to arrest him then and there for being in the parking lot of the detention center. But other times we've had demonstrations in that parking lot. And other times we've gone up the stairs and hung a banner from like the front of the building. But then there's been times that they've come out and said, like, you can only be on the sidewalk. You have to do this and this and this. So they play a little legal games every time there's demonstrators there. And the heaviest retaliation, of course, always is on the people inside. And it's for like when they organize. Because, at the end of the day, they have a lot of power over the people inside, and that's part of why people seek out jobs like that. It certainly isn't the pay. The pay is not great to be a sheriff in Etowah County if you're considering it. They just want to hurt people. And so especially, they just want to hurt people. This is such a bummer of an episode. I wish I had more to say other than there's this evil place where horrible things happen.
I mean, we have to get the word out though, because it's like if no one gets the word out, then no one will know like how bad this place is and like why it needs to be shut down. Have you heard like any, I guess, from people that have been released that you've talked to, or you've heard stories like what have people that have been detained there told like just absolute what goes on day to day. Like we know like the conditions are bad. It's dreary. It's dark. There's no sunlight really, but you hear the horror stories from other detention centers. But is there anything like highlighted specifically that you can think of that has to do with Etowah County just being atrocious?
The lack of sunlight is the big one. That's one of the horrible ones. I think the overall dreariness is the worst. The like being in a mundane place that's like mundane in that you have this same routine that you do every single day, but there's just like the constant threat of violence, and you're malnourished, and you don't have access to a library, and sometimes it hurts your spirit. Now, there's things to answer your question of specific things that I can't say on this podcast, and I wish I could.
Yeah. We
But
use
you'll
our
have to
imaginations.
use your imagination. There are horrible things going on inside that detention center.
Like just the lack of sunlight in this really the aspect of like solitary confinement is bad enough. Like that's already torture. Like it's people go crazy like in solitary confinement. It's recognized as torture. Like it's horrible. Like it's not something that any human being should go through. Like the fact that it's happening to people that haven't even broken a law. They just they cross an imaginary line to be with their family.
And sorry.
No, go
I
ahead.
didn't interrupt you.
No, go ahead.
When you say like people who haven't even broken the law, ICE plays a game of trying to get you to believe that the people locked up are locked up for your safety. And that plays into like white people fears of immigrants coming in and you know, the stuff Trump talked about. You all heard about it. But a lot of times it's like so silly, the reason that people are kept in. I have a friend who's in Etowah right now. I don't know if I can say his name on here, but we have a release campaign for him that will be coming out soon. But he was had a marijuana charge. He got arrested and they tried to give him a marijuana charge and a gun charge. The gun charge was immediately thrown out. The marijuana charge, he got sentenced to 2 years in not ICE detention, regular where you go for weed. Got sentenced to 2 years, ended up doing 3 years, got released, and then later got detained again by ICE. And now he's in Etowah, and they're saying they can't release him because he has criminal charges. Now he's from a state that is purging people's weed charges. But that's still the thing that ICE says they're keeping them in for. And so it's that same thing that's very much in the public discourse now of weed's getting legalized, but there's still people locked up for it. And that applies to every form of criminalization. And it applies to not just like US citizens. Okay, here's another example of that. We have, there's only one left, but we had many refugees from Eritrea. Eritrea is a small country in East Africa that has a very totalitarian government, and especially in the last like year or two is going through a lot of like war, conflict. And so there are a lot of refugees that are leaving. And so that someone could take their whole life, their whole livelihood, leave the place that they live, go across the ocean to the United States to try and like set up somewhere else, and then be detained by ICE is just a tragedy. but then, especially for Eritreans, we also had a very similar situation for Cubans. Eritrea doesn't accept deportations a lot of the times. And when ICE does deport people, sometimes illegally, like ICE has been known to deport people to a country that doesn't want those people. They're facing all kinds of violence, all the stuff that they left that country in the first place. So we had a group of Eritreans, and we've done release campaigns for them, and they've all been released except for one person. And so now they're the only person from their country that's in Etowah. One of the only Eritreans in ICE detention in the whole country. And his case is in a total just standstill. ICE has decided they don't want to release him, even though they could at any time release him. There's no law, no charge, no sentence saying that he has to be in there. But he doesn't have the documents that would be needed to deport them to Eritrea are not there. So they can't be deported and they won't be released. So they're just stuck there. And that happens over and over again in Etowah. People who just are stuck, and like ICE could release them, but they just want that extra, like however much they scrape off of that contract. But we have a campaign going to release him. Let me plug that and tell you listeners what you can do. So his name is Abraham, and you can call the regional ICE office and just let them know that you want them freed. This has provided, this tactic has been reasonably successful in the past, where if we get enough people calling them over and over again, they decide that it's more work to try and deal with these people bugging them than to just release them. Because they could push the button and release folks at any time. So what you have to do is you have to call Diane Witte at the regional ICE office. Call it and ask for Diane. They will tell you that they're not available. So you just do whatever you can to leave a message, ask them to write it down, whatever you want to do. The number is 504-599-7800. And you should call them as much as you can every day until he gets released. And then there will be more release campaigns. If we want to abolish ICE, the people on the outside have to be putting in the work to get people out. Closing detention centers from the top down is just leading to people being shuffled around. Like, we need releases. So if you're trying to get involved, all that info is also on our social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter as Shut Down Etowah. There's a script you can read if you want to read off of a script. You can also at any time call the detention center and let them know that you have a problem with how people are being treated and that you want something to change. They love hearing your input at that office, but they need to hear your input.
They love hearing the input. I bet Diane loves her job. Oh man. Asher, I guess the last question from me specifically, it's the one on top of my head, is just like, what do you see the future as when it comes to this? Like, what do you see in terms of the detention center, in terms of the releasing the people in there? Like, what is your ideal future? We talk about abolition and we talk about melting ice. We talk about this, like, what would you like to see happen? Or not even, but the organization, what would y'all like to see happen in an ideal situation?
Okay. If we could pull the strings, we'd release every single person inside. the ICE detainees, and the county jail. We would cut the contract with ICE so that no government in Etowah County is in any way affiliated with ICE, and we would bulldoze the county jail. We're firmly committed to the fact that it cannot be reformed. It has to be shut down. And we know that when it is shut down, they will try to build another one, because this facility was built in the 90s when they shut down the old county jail for very similar things. In the 90s, the court stepped in and said that this place has to get shut down. So they did, and they built this new facility, and now this one has to go too. And the next one has to go too. And then we will have, since we will have won, and there will be an empty lot there, and there will be a lot of people with extra energy. We'll go to St. Clair Correctional, we'll go to Tutwiler, we'll go to Donaldson, we'll go to Kilby. We have to shut down every prison in Alabama.
Reminds me of the Howard Dean speech. We're there, and we're going to Washington. And, oh my God, I'm old. Holy shit.
But I don't know the future.
Yeah.
So I know that you kind of glanced over when you've had to talk to people who listen to like the Fox News sound bites and all that. Do you have any like advice for people that are like having to deal with people who come up with those same arguments over and over and over again?
Yeah, I'll say broadly, as like an activist, you are not looking to convert every single person that walks past you. You are trying to identify the people who believe the same things you believe and like plug them into the movement. So if someone is committed to there being a jail and there being sheriffs, they might not want to be an abolitionist. And so talk to them however you want, but protect your own energy. One thing you can say though, that I think it puts it succinctly, is that, well, people always say, well, what about rapists? What about murderers? This like boogeyman that they've come up with. And first of all, as a feminist, we all know that sexual abusers and rapists don't end up in jail, and that most of the time they just walk free. And as an abolitionist, we know that taking someone who is an abuser and putting them in a box with other vulnerable people is not going to fix anything. Like, you can't take jails don't do anything about murderers, about rapists, about any of that. Like, it's all an after the fact, punitive, like financial thing. And as soon as you can like split away from that way of thinking that like this system in any way protects anyone, and thinking that the amount of time that someone serves by being in a cage like fixes anything wrong with them, is just absurd. And as soon as someone can make that split, then they can start to see like a different way forward. And that's called abolition.
Hell yeah. I guess before we call it quits, what are your final thoughts? That have you thought of anything that maybe you wanted to talk on before, add to? Like, what are your final thoughts on this, on all of this? Like, what would you like the people to know?
I'm not sure. That's a hard one. I'm trying to think of a good way to wrap it all up.
Well, I'll take the pressure off of you for a second.
Yeah.
I was just thinking, as the resident kind of linking things together, kind of history nerd here. There's a weird amount of crossover in what happens at Etowah so how can I say this? So when Apache warriors in the Apache Wars in the late 1800s were captured. When they were sent across the states, they decided to imprison them far away from their homes, which is very similar. And they actually, Geronimo himself and several of his closest confidants were imprisoned in Alabama for quite a long time. And I think that probably served quite a similar purpose in that it takes a lot of time to get there. Alabama is kind of out of the way for a lot of, like, especially kind of during the late 1800s. So you have quite a lot of westward expansion, but not, like a whole lot. But if you're thinking of westward expansion, like nobody's coming down to Alabama. Everybody's going into the Midwest and up into the North. So you have that kind of strange crossover. Well, it's not strange if you think about like the reasons that these kind of things happen. And then there's also the crossover with violating the bodily autonomy of people who can bear children, or they think they can bear, that could bear children, and these hysterectomies that they were, well, not at this facility, but at other facilities, forcibly having people get hysterectomies. And that happened a lot to that happened to Black women, that happened to Indigenous women, all through kind of mid-century in the US, and it's also happened in Canada. And these are all kind of just the most insidious control tactics that, you can't continue to make trouble for us if there are none left of you, if you know what I mean. And it's just kind of, it's strange to think that these tactics are clearly surviving from at least the late 1800s, at least mid last century, and are still being carried out very recently because they work. They work at just beating out the spirit in these people, trying to, resist unlawful and unconscionable detention, and stopping their right to migrate, their right to safety, their right to, just having a place to live. So there's my final thought.
Fuck. This is a depressing ass episode. Like, this is, God, wow.
You asked me to come talk about it.
Yeah, that is true. That is true. I did this to myself and to our viewers, to my host.
Oh, look, don't keep calling it depressing, because if you do that, that gives people the reason to go, oh, well, if it's depressing, I don't have to listen. They need to fucking listen to
Very
it.
true.
If you get depressed about it, that means that you're on the right path. You should be affected by this. You shouldn't just be seeing it in the news or hearing it and going, oh, well, it's happening and I can't do anything about it. You need to be affected by this so that you can take action.
Alabama's the nation's prison. Also, I totally thought about this, how, like, you talked about the Apache, but also in a smaller aspect, Alabama only has one women's prison, and that's Tutwiler. So if you have family in Mobile or like Huntsville, it's like 3-4 hours away, and you can't afford to see your family, like the only place you're gonna go is Tutwiler. And so like it really is to like really mentally break down people that like you will probably never see your family again because they can't afford to come see you. Just
as a small aside, like personally, I do know somebody who is incarcerated in Florida. What they were incarcerated for was trumped up, but that would have taken place in Florida if it happened. However, they were captured in Connecticut. They were brought back down to Florida, and constantly for the last, I think it's been about 8 years now, we, like my family are the ones who would be closest to them in Florida. And we are constantly finding out that they were just picked up and moved to another facility overnight, and nobody knows where they went. We don't hear for hours. Their children, who should be the first ones that were called, they don't know where they are. I constantly get messages just panicked because we don't know where they are. We don't know, like, all of the people that they kind of created a security net with in their current facility are now gone from them. And from the last place that they were at, they've been, actually during COVID, they got picked up and moved and nobody knew what happened to them. But in the facility they were in before, for my family to visit them would be at least a 10-hour day, because we'd have to drive all the way up the length of Florida into the Panhandle. to get in for visitation would start at like 10 a.m. and go until about 3 p.m. So for us, that would be like a 4 or 5 hour drive up. Then we stay from as soon as we get there, usually about 10 a.m. to about 3 p.m. You can't go into the restrooms. You have to have a guard come over and let you into the restroom. And sometimes that doesn't happen. You're buying food from their little commissary there. I have been scared shitless in these facilities, not because of the people who are in there who are visiting, because of the guards. and going into these places, like as a cis woman wearing a bra with a wire in it, like you constantly get notices that like you can't wear bras with wires anymore because it could be a thing. And then you have to go in there and you have to unhook your bra and let somebody, this guard, come in, feel under your breasts, and then like shake them to show that you have nothing in there, and then get redressed in this little tiny like pat down room, and then go in to visit your relative. And it's the things that can change just in a snap, and what they decide that can come in. So you can't come in with more than $20, and you can't bring a $20 bill. It has to be in lower denominations. You can't come in with too much jewelry. They have to list down all the jewelry that you have. You can't come in with underwires in your bra. You can't come in with, if you come in with shoes that have like metal bits on them, you have to take them off, and you have to be like completely searched and all that. And that's in a regular prison, you know? And then consider that these people who are being kept there are not even afforded the same rights as citizens in this way. They're not afforded anything. And the kind of way that they stop people from going, they deter people from wanting to go in to visit by making it so fucking difficult. And now they don't even get visitors because of quote unquote COVID, because they are not proactively dealing with it. I'm sorry, that was a huge rant.
No, it's horrible. And they love making up rules. They have limits on minimums and maximums, and they just come up with shit all the time because they like to.
Yeah. It constantly, like, there's, when we were lining up at this previous facility, there would be a pavilion on the grass, and then there's a line in front of the pavilion, and then you get called up to the next line, which is across a road. So there's like a road where they patrol, and you line up at that line, and then they call you up to the window. If you pass any of these lines without specifically being told, they pretty much tell you to leave. So after 5 hours of driving, getting up usually at about 4 a.m. so that we can leave from Central Florida to get up to North Florida. And then if you cross the line and they don't like it, that's it, you're fucked. You can't go see whoever you're going to visit. And this is this constant, like we've decided this is the rule today. Somebody's in a bad mood, you know. I can't even like vocalize the frustration just coming from somebody on the outside, you know.
This country's fucked.
Hey, we didn't do it.
As Tyler would say. Tyler, this country's fucked, man. Oh my God.
Well, I've thought about my outro a little bit.
Okay. I'm sorry about all the ranting, but maybe I gave you time to come up with it.
You can rant. It's the podcast.
All I could think of was the one family member that my mom told me about, and like freezing cold upstate New York, and it just be like being so fucking cold and having to take a bus to go see this person. And like, I can't even imagine like being in a New York State facility and it just on the Canadian border and it being like -30 and just freezing.
I'm sorry, please go ahead, Asher.
No, that all needs to be said. Okay, so I have some closing things. Earlier you asked about children. And yes, Joe Biden has not kept his promise to stop detaining children. They did some fancy word switching with what they call the facilities, but really nothing has fundamentally changed. Specific to Etowah County, I think everyone who doesn't know about it, maybe this could be a future podcast episode for y'all. But look up the Gadsden 6. In the 80s, there were 6 children that got arrested, tried, and charged, and given life sentences without any attorneys or any of their parents present. And
the fuck?
Yeah, that's a really horrible, traumatic thing to read. But it's, I think, an important part of, it's a very, very important thing to know about if you're dealing about abolition in Alabama. And that's because you asked about kids. I think everyone should learn about that. That's not ICE specific. That's just the Etowah County law enforcement. But everyone should know about that. So look up the Gadsden 6. I'm not going to do the whole story right now. I'm going to plug the Etowah Freedom Fund. The Etowah Freedom Fund is amazing. They help move money around and get it to people where they need it the most. They post bail. They put money on people's commissaries. They buy plane tickets for people going home. And that is all amazing work that has to continue. So if you are able to, please consider making a donation. They're on PayPal, and their name is Etowah Freedom Fund. So you can go to paypal.me/Etowah Freedom Fund and give them some money, because if we're gonna get it shut down, there's a whole lot more people that need to get released, and that's a whole lot more plane tickets, and we got to be there to help them. Also, the Free Abraham campaign. Abraham, I talked about him earlier. He's the person from Eritrea. Every other person from Eritrea got released. And so there's no reason for them to still be in there. ICE knows this, and they need to hear it from more and more people. So if you can, I know it can be scary calling into like an ICE office, but especially as someone outside, especially if you're documented, you can say whatever you want, but they need to hear that we want him free. So call the ICE regional office at 504-599-7800. That's 504-599-7800, and tell them to release Abraham from the Etowah from Etowah County Detention Center. And of course, follow Shut Down Etowah on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. We post updates as we plan demonstrations. We post updates as stuff happens inside, and you'll see a lot of other great stuff from other organizations that we work with, who also do immigrant justice and abolition work.
Hell yeah! Those specific links, like the PayPal and anything about contact info, send to me. I'll plug them in the show notes. Also, I've started kind of like cycling the top 3 links on our link tree for people to, like, it's certain things like people can click on, either donate to certain things or to look at certain things. So send me those. If you send me those 2 links on Twitter, I'll put them in our link tree as well and leave them up for a while. So when people view our link tree, they can click and donate, or they can click to call and stuff like that. And then also social media for Shut Down Etowah, send them to me and I'll plug them in the show notes so people can click, because you never want to underestimate people's laziness. Just one click and they can get to wherever they need to go. Asher, this episode was super depressing, but thank you so much for coming on. I'm really glad you did. People really need to know about the Etowah County Detention Center and Shut Down Etowah. Finally glad y'all were able to come on, because I've been following y'all for a while. It's a great organization and y'all are doing great work. And I really hope one day that we can smash ICE and throw it into the ocean.
Here's to that.
Oh, wait a minute. No, wrong app. Okay. At Dixieland, the proletariat, we believe the South will rise again, but this time for the right reasons, those being worker-owned means of production, decolonization, and self-determination for all oppressed peoples. Make sure to like, follow, and subscribe to us on social media at Dixie Prole. We are coming to you from the birthplace of the Civil Rights Movement, Montgomery, Alabama, as well as the United Kingdom. We also like to recognize we're recording on occupied land that rightfully belongs to the Muskogee Nation. Asher, again, thank you so much. Fuck ICE. I don't know. Thank you so much. I think this is a great episode. I think people learned a lot. So, as Tyler would say, good Lord
willing, and keep the dead from rising. We'll see y'all tomorrow.
I'll see you tomorrow.